HRC, 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 HRC. Hebrew readers, Hebrew readers, Hebrew readers, church.
Welcome to Hebrew Readers Church. I'm your brother Zachwa, and we have a great and exciting lesson for you all today. We are going into Alahayimly relationships between a husband and a wife. Now, we are going to be going into a lot of physical and spiritual aspects of a marriage and the things that come against us in a marriage and mindsets. So just stick with us, and Alahayim willing, we'll all grow in the faith today. Now, we're going to start off with, if a person is unable to remain chaste, marriage is necessary. We're going to read 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7 through 9. For I would that all men were even as myself. Right now, this is Paul speaking, so Paul is actually explaining that he would like for all men or women to remain chaste, like to not get married, right? To not if they can contain themselves, to not get married. But every man hath his proper gift of Alahayim, one after this manner, and another after that. So everybody's different. Everybody has their path that they have to go, right? So it's not for everybody to be chaste and not get married. And it's for some to get married. And there's no sin or trespass in that. I say, therefore, to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I, right? So for the unmarried, for those that are still virgins, it's good if you abide and stay a virgin, if you're able to contain. And for the widows that are over 60, it's good for them if they want to remain single, okay? But if they cannot contain, let them marry. For it is better to marry than to burn, right? So you don't want to give yourself over to fornication. You want to find a husband or find a wife, stick with them, and it's going to keep you away from fornication, right? So that's the intent. Now, we're going to jump over to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 28. But and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned, as I said before. So if you marry, you haven't sinned. It's just your path. And if a virgin marry, she hath not sinned, right? Because it's not a trespass. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. All right. So the trouble in the flesh is going to be because of the carnal union, right? So because of the senses, it is going to be a trouble. That's why you have to have your wife, or you have to have your husband. Now, who not to marry, right? Avoid strangers who are not of the same faith, because we cannot be unequally yoked to unbelievers. And it's going to make more sense in a moment once I go into what's going to come against newlyweds and people that are married. It's going to make more sense, because that you have to be of the same mindset and you have to be of the same understanding so that you can withstand what's coming against you. And if you don't, then we're going to see what's going to happen. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14 through 16. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion has light with darkness? So if one of you is upholding the laws and doing what's right, according to Alahayim, and one of you is not, there's not going to be peace. And it's going to be very hard for you both to walk in concord with one another. Now, the scripture also says if you do marry an unbeliever, before you had the understanding of what we're actually supposed to do, then if that unbeliever is pleased to dwell with you, then put them not away. Now that unbeliever has to be okay with your lifestyle and not try to cause you to go off into iniquity or to sin from your Alahayim. So there's a big difference in that. They actually have to be okay with your lifestyle, and they actually have to be accepting of your lifestyle. And if that is not the case, then you're going to end up running into problems with one another. What concord has Christ with Belial? Right? So if you're actually trying to walk correctly and uprightly, it's going to be very, very hard to be in concord with your spouse. Of what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of Alahayim with idols? And that is the clear distinction of what is actually happening in the spiritual. One of you is walking in, or at least having the goal of walking in the spirit of Alahayim, and the other is walking in the spirit of idols. So it ends up clashing one another because they're opposites. For ye are the temple of the living Alahayim, as Alahayim hath said, I would dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Alahayim, and they shall be my people. So this is the goal for us that are actually trying to walk in Alahayim, is that Alahayim would dwell in us and walk in us. So we actually have to remove ourselves so that Alahayim can actually work in us, because it's us that is standing against or withstanding Alahayim. If you read it's in Revelations, Yache says, I'm knocking at the door. It's actually us that's closing the door because we want to remain in our sins. And it's our sins that cause Alahayim not to be able to dwell in us and to walk in us. And that's what causes us to continue hearkening to idols or continue doing the works of idols, because of our own heart, what we allowing to dwell in our vessel, that's shutting Alahayim out. And he said, if we will actually open the door so that Alahayim can come in and we can be a vessel of honor and not dishonor, he says, I will be their Alahayim, and they shall be my people. So only by Alahayim dwelling in us and walking in us are we Alahayim's people. So we have to avoid marrying unbelievers, which helps avoid the temptation to turn one's heart away from Alahayim to follow the spirits that are leading an unbeliever. And that is why we have to be we have to gain the knowledge. We can't reject the knowledge, but we have to gain the knowledge so that we're able to apply it in our lives and our decisions that we make in our lives. I'm going to jump over to Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 3 and 4. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other Alahayims. So will the anger of Ahayah be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. And this is what we don't want. So we have to be mindful of who we're actually choosing for a mate, and make sure that we're praying to Alahayim to confirm it, and that we're actually putting in the work to establish the relationship before you actually get into the relationship. You want to make sure that that person understands what it is that you're following and what it is that you believe, and make sure that they are in agreement with what you believe and what you follow before you guys start trying to come together as husband and wife. That is very important. Because the spirit of fornication, which is at work in an unbeliever, can cause you to sin. And it can make your life very hard and make it hard for you to actually prosper serving Alahayim, because they're constantly going to be trying to pull you or make you fall. They're not going to be supporting you and encouraging you and helping you go forward. They're trying to make you trespass and transgress. So one way to avoid it is by not marrying an unbeliever and not taking a wife or a husband for lust's sake, but by actually seeing, is that person trying to serve Alahayim? Is that person willing to serve Alahayim? Are they willing to make the efforts to change and adjust their lifestyle to actually serve an Alahayim? You actually have to see the works so that you can actually see if it's true what they're saying and if they actually believe it and if it's actually in their hearts. Because if it's not in their heart, they're going to say it, but they're not going to do it. And this is something that you have to be mindful of and you have to be paying attention to see if they're actually taking in the information and if they're actually in agreement with it. So people that are desiring to be married, wait on Alahayim to give you a spouse while continuing to focus on your own growth. And this is where if you actually continue to focus on your own growth, Alahayim's going to give you what's needful for you, just like he did for Adam. Adam was sitting there focused on his own work. Adam wasn't focused on a wife. Adam was focused on doing the work of Alahayim. And Alahayim said, it'll be good for Adam to have someone. So don't take it upon yourself to be out looking, because that's going to lead you to covetousness and fornication. So focus on your works, focus on your own growth. And when you're ready, Alahayim knows you're ready. And Alahayim's going to give you a spouse. We're going to confirm that in the Testament of Reuben, chapter 4, verse 1. Pay no heed, therefore, my children, to the beauty of women, nor set your mind on their affairs. Right? So don't pay attention to their beauty. Focus on your own work. And don't set your mind on their affairs. Don't be worried about what they got going on in their life. But walk in singleness of heart in the fear of the Lord, and expend labor on good works, and on study, and on your flocks. So expend your labor, so that all that energy you got, put it on good works, doing good works unto Alahayim, working on keeping the commandments, working on bringing forth fruits of the Spirit, and study, right? Keep studying so that you can constantly gain the knowledge and learn so that you can become a better person for your spouse and for Alahayim and your flocks. So focus on the work that you're doing so that you can make sure that your children are going to be okay, and you're going to be okay, and you're going to be able to provide for your wife until the Lord give you a wife, whom he will, that ye suffer, not as I did. Right? And for the women, you focus on Alahayim. You focus on Alahayim, working on yourself, working on being obedient to your father, working on being obedient to Alahayim, humbling yourself, submitting yourself to Alahayim, not walking in your own ways or your own feelings or your own emotions. Focus, not focused on doing what's right in your own sight. Working on what Alahayim is telling you, his ordinances. Right? You have to work on these things. You have to work on being honest. You have to work on being a good steward for Alahayim, a good servant. Because women, you're always going to have a master. Either Alahayim is your master and your father, or Alahayim is your master and your husband. There's always going to be a master over you. So if you never work on submitting and never work on humility, and you never work on being led and being okay and subject to being led, you're going to struggle serving Alahayim always. So this is why it's so important that when you have that time, you actually take that time and utilize that time that for it to be helpful for you to actually, for when you do come together with a husband or when you do come together with a wife. Avoid taking a spouse for lust, lest that spouse become a snare unto you. All right. So if you take that spouse for lust and you be hasty, or if you take that spouse when you're in iniquity and you go and find you a wife in your iniquity, that wife or that husband is going to be a snare unto you. And it's going to be very, very hard for you. But wait until Alahayim give you a spouse. So if you wait, it's going to be much easier. When Alahayim gives you a spouse, make sure the bishop consents to the marriage so that it's not done for lust, right? And that's the proper order. We're going to read in Ignatius to Polycarp, chapter 5, verse 2. It becometh men and women too, when they marry, to unite themselves with the consent of the bishop, that the marriage may be after the Lord and not after concupiscence. Let all things be done in the honor of Alahayim. And that's our purpose, that all things be done in the honor of Alahayim, because the bishop is going to make sure that it's done right according to Alahayim. And the bishop is not going to have a respect of persons. The bishop is going to make sure that all stones are turned over and that it is upright. That marriage process, to focus on our study, our flocks, our good works, and to keep our body and spirit pure until Alahayim gives us a spouse, then getting married with the consent of the bishop honors Alahayim. So that's the process. Even Moses, when he was taking Zipporah as a wife, he was in the ward for 10 years, and he was sitting there teaching Zipporah for 10 years to make sure that Zipporah was on board with everything and that she understood everything, so that she understood what she was going to be following and what was her expectation as being a wife and serving Alahayim. That's the proper way to make sure that you guys are in agreement and that you guys understand what you're getting yourself into going into the marriage. And this is important because of what is going to come against you once you get into the marriage. So what comes against newly wedded? And why do both parties need to be walking in the same faith and same understanding so that they're not given over to their emotions or their feelings, or that there is no net of deceit or lying in the midst of them? Because if there's a net of deceit and lying in the midst of them, it's going to give place for this specific spirit to cause havoc in your relationship. We're going to read the Testament of Solomon, chapter 21. And I at once bade another demon to be led unto me. And instantly there approached me the demon Asmodeus, bound, and I asked him, Who art thou? But he shot me a glance of anger and rage and said, Now remember, when the spirit comes into you, or when it takes over you, you take on the characteristics of that spirit. He said, but as soon as he asked him, Who art thou? But he shot me a glance of anger and rage. It was in his eyes. That anger and rage was in his eyes. It was in his countenance. And what did he say in a smart remark? And who art thou? That's what the demon said to Solomon. He said, Who are you? You see how smart and snappy that is? So we have these clear distinctions of when someone is being attacked. And I said to him, thus punished as thou art, answerest thou me? So you already in bounds, and you're answering me like that. But he with rage said to me, but how shall I answer thee? For thou art a son of man. And this is some of the things that come into our relationships. This is a mindset or the spirit that comes into the relationship. It's you can't tell me nothing because I see myself greater than you. I see myself greater than you. How can you correct me? How can you say anything to me? And this spirit is in many of our relationships because we don't understand it and we're not on the same page spiritually and knowledgeably. So it was already in the eyes. Now we see it come out in through the speech. It's snappy and it's high-minded. And here goes the explanation of why it feels high-minded. Here's the justification. Now this is what happens. They already feel better than you. And now they're going to justify why they feel better than you. Now this can go for a man or a woman, whether said or unsaid. But the spirit of it, the acts of it come forth, though they may not explain it. Now this we get the explanation. Whereas I was born an angel seed by a daughter of man, so that no word of our heavenly kind addresses to the earthborn can be overweening. So he said, I'm better than you because I was born of a woman and an angel. And my understanding is overweening to you. It's something that you can't understand. Wherefore also my star is bright in heaven, and men call it, some the wan or wane, and some the dragon's child. I keep near unto the star, so ask me not many things. So because I go up to the heavens, I go up into the firmament, don't ask me a lot, because I know more than you and you're not going to be able to understand it. For thy kingdom also after a little time is to be disrupted, and thy glory is but for a season. So because the demons can go into the firmament and they can hear from the heavens what the angels are saying or what the report is from those that go and report from the heavens down to the earth, it lifted him up because he had a little more knowledge, or he knew some things that Solomon didn't know. Can you see how that plays into our relationships? That one person may know something that another one doesn't, and it lifts them up, and they lift themselves up against one another, or one lifts themselves up against the other. For thy kingdom also after a little time is to be disrupted, and thy glory is but for a season. And short will be thy tyranny over us, and then we shall again have free range over mankind, so as that they shall revere us as if we were Alahayims, not knowing, men that they are, the names of the angels set over us. So this demon felt big because of the knowledge that it had. Doesn't that sound familiar? That we get puffed up by knowledge. So you see, when this demon comes in, you start taking on the characteristics of it. Now, let's see what else happens and what this spirit actually does as his occupation. And I, Solomon, on hearing this, bound him more carefully. So Solomon was like, okay, I'm not going to take this demon lightly. And we shouldn't either. We shouldn't take this demon lightly either. Even when we see our spouse or someone operating in this, don't take it lightly. And ordered him to be flogged with thongs of ox hide, and to tell me humbly what was his name and what his business. Solomon's like, tell me humbly, because man, you are lifted up. And he answered me thus, I am called Asmodeus among mortals, and my business is to plot against the newly wedded, so that they may not know one another. Now look at that. This spirit comes specifically against those that are newly wedded. And the objective is for you not to know one another, so that you will fight one another. And you see how this spirit operates. If the spirit enters into the wife is going to be snappy. She's going to be angry. She's going to be lifted up. And the same for the husband. How can you get to know one another when one is already prideful and thinks they know everything? So you see the way that this spirit operates and the characteristics of it actually causes you not to know one another. And this spirit is plotting against you, is lying in wait, seeking the opportunity that you may give it. And this is why it's so important for anyone that's seeking to get married to be on the same page and understand these things. Understand what's coming against you. Understand the law of Alahayim, the fruits of the Spirit. Understanding the holy virgins and working them. You have to be in agreement with the fruits of the Spirit. You have to be in agreement with the law to actually work it. Because if you're not working it and you're being a hypocrite and saying you are, but you're doing something contrary, you're going to give place to Asmodeus. And you're not going to know your spouse. It's going to be very hard for y'all to get on the same page and be in concord together. He goes on to say, and I sever them utterly by many calamities. So he brings a lot of situations into the picture that causes more pride, because the pride is already there. Now, when the situations come that Asmodeus is creating, now it just gives place for the pride to come. And it's very hard. Even Solomon, in all his humility, and even being very delicate with the spirit, because he said, I bound him more carefully. And then he asked him, tell me humbly. So Solomon actually humbled himself, trying to deal with this demon. He put on more humility, but it's still hard to deal with. Even Solomon's still having an issue. And I severed them utterly by many calamities, and I waste away the beauty of virgin women, and estranged their hearts. He attacks the weaker vessel more times than not. He wastes away the beauty of women. One way is because when a woman has, or a man has a lot of evil spirits, the beauty, their countenance, their face changes. And a lot of times, Asmodeus will cause them not to be married. It's the same thing that happened with in the book of Tobit with Tobias. He wasted away the beauty of virgin women because he kept killing their husbands before they could actually perform the ceremony for marriage. He was wasting away her beauty by not allowing nobody to marry her. And he also estranges their hearts, like in the book of Joseph and Asenath, where she grew a hatred for men. So it's this same demon, Asmodeus, that attacks the women more specifically. So for men and husbands, or men looking to be husbands, you have to be very wary of this spirit. And you have to do all that you can beforehand to prepare your wife for what's going to come after. What else does this demon do? And I said to him, is this thy only business? And he answered me, I transport men into fits of madness and desire when they have wives of their own, so that they leave them and go off by night and day to others that belong to other men. So this is the same demon that causes men to go out and commit adultery. You see, it was very specific. He said, I transfer men into fits of madness and desire. And when they have wives of their own, so they already have their own wives, so that they leave them and go off by night and day to others that belong to other men. So they're going to other men's wives. Therefore, they're committing adultery. This is how the spirit operates. It would tear up a marriage quickly if you guys are not on the same page going in, and that you don't have a foundation in Yache to understand what you're supposed to be doing and actually putting forth the efforts and the works to doing it. If you're not actually keeping the commandments and working on keeping the commandments and knowledgeable of the commandments, if you're not knowledgeable of the fruits of the spirit and the holy virgins, and you're not knowledgeable of the works of the flesh to understand what you need to abstain from, and the women in black, then you are going to be susceptible, because my people suffer for lack of knowledge. You're going to suffer. And this is what we don't want. This is why we're speaking about it right now, to help anyone from going in this direction to actually have to deal with these types. You may have to deal with it, but it's good to already know it, so that when it does happen, if it does happen, to say, hey, you remember what we went over in the Testament of Solomon? Let's revisit it. Let's recount what's happening between us. there has to be some foundation, because if there's not a foundation, it's going to be rough. And if it's not a foundation, that already tells you that you married her for lust's sake, or you married him for lust's sake. It's going to be a very clear distinction. Now, this is the goal for Asmodeus. Asmodeus wants you, with the result that they commit sin and fall into murderous deeds. Now, what does he mean by that? One, you're committing a sin when you're dealing in the spirit of anger or pride or hatred. You're committing a sin when you're dealing in the spirit of deceit or lying. You're falling into a murderous deed if you go and commit adultery. So you may not understand what's happening to you, but the demon does. And the demon knows where it's trying to get you. And this is why husband and wives have to be on the same page as one another, because you're protecting one another from these evil spirits, from these demons. That's why in Sirach it says a woman's supposed to be a tower for a husband, a tower of defense. It says, Sirach 26:22, a harlot shall be accounted as spittle, but a married woman is a tower against death to her husband. Y'all supposed to protect one another, not give place to evil spirits and demons to operate in the midst of your relationship to tear you apart. And it takes both of you to have the knowledge. Now, what are the standards for a husband and wife? We're going to go to Colossians chapter 3, verse 12 through 17. Put on, therefore, as the elect of Alahayim, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies. So you got to have mercy for one another. You have to understand, if you hurt somebody, you have to understand that they may be hurt. If you do something that's not right, you have to understand that something comes from when you do something that's not right. And you also have to understand when somebody's going through something that you have to have mercy on them. Or if somebody done something wrong, you have to have mercy. Kindness. You gotta be kind to one another. And the only way you can be kind to one another is if you love the person. Because hatred isn't gonna bring forth kindness. And we're gonna get into that. Humbleness of mind. Now that humbleness of mind, what would it do? It would keep you away from the demon Asmodeus. Because Asmodeus dealt in pride. And through that, putting on that meekness, being lowly minded, lowliness of heart, not thinking yourself to be greater, but to be the least, long suffering, making sure that when you're going through a situation, that you remain pleasant and loving through the situation. Forbearing one another. So when someone does something that's not right, you speak against them or stand against it in love so that they can understand that it's not good, for what they're doing isn't right and it's not good. And forgiving one another. When somebody does something and they repent for it, forgive them. That doesn't mean that if they do something wrong and they continue in what they're doing that's wrong, that you are accepting of it. Because in the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, it says, even if they continue to do what is wrong, forgive them from the heart. So you have to forgive them no matter what. But there still is something, if they're continuing to do it, then then that's when we go into separating yourself. There's a difference of forgiving and allowing somebody to abuse you. There's a difference. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you. Right? So forgiving one another, even if any have a quarrel against any. So if somebody has a problem with you, you got to forgive them too. And if you may have done the wrong, you still have to forgive, even if they are holding a grudge against you. Even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. And above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. And y'all know in past lessons, we went into charity. So you can see how charity would actually help you against the demon Asmodeus, is you actually put on that charity. Because it said, above all these things, put on charity. You have to walk in it. And let the peace of Alahayim rule in your hearts, to the which also ye are called in one body, and be ye thankful. So if you're actually doing these things, you're going to have peace in your heart. If you're not doing it, the conscience is going to be weighing on you, and you're not going to be at peace. And that's going to give place for wickedness. Being pressed with conscience is very timorous and forecasteth grievous things. You're going to struggle with wickedness if you're actually not doing right, according to Alahayim. But if you're actually doing right, you're going to have peace. And you're going to be thankful unto Alahayim, because you know it's Alahayim that gave you that peace, that inner peace. And whatsoever ye do in word and deed, do all in the name of the Lord Yache, giving thanks to Alahayim and the Father by him. So whatever you do in word or deed, your works or your speech, do all in the name of the Lord Yache, because you're upholding him in everything you say and everything you do. And always giving thanks to Alahayim and the Father by him. In the name of our Adonai Yache, I pray unto you, Ahayah and Kwadoshi. I'm thankful, I praise you. That helps us. Showing reverence unto our head for men. And women, you have to show reverence unto your head, your husband, and Yache, and Ahayah and Kwadoshi. 1 Corinthians 7:3. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. All right, so this is both parties. Benevolence is kindness. conjugal duty, benevolence, goodwill. Right? Now, conjugal duty is is um is intercourse between a husband and a wife. And if we continue reading in 1 Corinthians 7:4, it's going to corroborate it. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. So we see exactly what Paul was actually saying. You have to have kindness, right? And you treat each other with love by coming together physically so that you're a tower of defense from the devil or from any of the spirits or demons that may come against you to try to cause you to go into covetousness or fornication. The wife hath not power over her own body, but the husband. And likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Right? So physically, you guys have to protect one another. Defraud ye not one the other. So don't defraud one, because then you're not protecting each other. Except it be with consent for a time, unless you guys are in agreement. That you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. So this is why the wife has to be a strong tower, has to be a tower for a husband, and the husband has to protect the wife. You guys are working together to fight against evil spirits and the devil and demons. This is why Alahayim loveth nothing more. In three things was he glorified, and one of them was a husband and wife that agree. Because if they agree that they have to stand against evil spirits together, then that's what they're going to do. But one can't be giving themselves over to idols, thinking that you guys are going to be in agreement to stand against evil spirits when one is allowing evil spirits to dwell in them. It's not going to work. What concord does Yache have with Belial? This is love, to not defraud one another unless consented between both parties, and not the spirit of hatred to give place to the devil by using our bodies as means of controlling or manipulating one another. So we have to walk in truth. We have to walk in the ordinances of Alahayim, and that's going to protect us from all evil spirits. This is why Alahayim gives us these laws and ordinances and commandments, is to protect us from things that we don't understand until we actually get the understanding by being meek and lowly. Alahayim giveth understanding to the meek and lowly. So by us getting to a place of being meek and lowly and just doing and trusting Alahayim to do what Alahayim is showing us to do, though we may not understand it, he's actually going to give us the understanding. But if we are high-minded and we don't want to do anything unless the understanding comes to us or that we have the understanding of it, then you're going to fall. And this is why the meek and lowly, being servants and having that servant mindset, actually allows them to prosper in Alahayim. Because they're not looking to have the understanding for themselves. They're just looking to do what they're commanded. That's a servant. A servant doesn't get to understand, or let's say an employee doesn't, which is a servant, an employee doesn't get to understand why the company is making the decisions that they're making. The servant just comes in and does their work. And many of us don't want to be servants. We don't want to just come in and do the work. We want to be the master. And for that pride gives place to these demons and evil spirits. So I pray that you have a reanalyzing of self, a reanalyzing the mind to actually be a servant and to put on that servant mentality. Now, fornication attacks the mind, right? We're going to jump into the testament of Reuben, chapter 6, verse 5. Flee therefore fornication, my children, and command your wives and your daughters that they adorn not their heads and their faces to deceive the mind. Right? So don't command your wives and your daughters that they don't adorn their heads and faces to deceive, to go out to look fine or to look some certain way to attract men. Because every woman who uses these wiles hath been reserved for eternal punishment. So if you allow them to do that, and if they're doing that themselves, that's a punishment for them, and that's a punishment for you for allowing it. For thus they allured the watchers who were before the flood. So this same spirit is the same thing that allured the watchers. For they continually beheld them, they lusted after them, and they conceived the act in their mind. For they changed themselves into the shape of men and appeared to them when they were with their husbands. Now, do you guys hear this? These women were married. The watchers came, transformed themselves into men, and appeared to them when they were with their husbands. What spirit is that operating? These watchers, they went after women that were married, other men's wives. And the women too were lusting after someone who wasn't their husband. Who was working here? The same Asmodeus. And the women lusting in their minds after their forms gave birth to giants, for the watchers appeared to them as reaching unto heaven. The women weren't content because covetousness comes before fornication, and after their lack of contentment brought forth fornication. Now, I just wanted to touch on that so that we can actually dive into it. Fornication attacks the mind of men and women, and eventually the act will come forth. Because after it attacks your mind, fornication enters into the nature and senses of men. Right? So, once that fornication comes to your mind through covetousness, because covetousness sets you up to desire it, fornication comes into your mind, you start seeing the act, or you start desiring the act. Fornication enters into it's sitting in your nature, fornication sitting in your nature because you know the feeling of it. For these women, they were already married, so they understood the feeling, the physical senses feeling. So it was already sitting in their nature. And then it entered into the senses because they wanted to fulfill it. So chapter 3 of the Testament of Reuben, verse 12. For my mind, taken in thought of the woman's nakedness, right? So we're seeing how fornication is working again, even with Reuben himself. For my mind, taken in the thought of the woman's for my mind, taken in the thought of the woman's nakedness. So you start seeing those thoughts. You start seeing those images. That's fornication operating. Suffered me not to sleep until I had wrought the abominable thing. So it was sitting in its nature and in its senses until he had to fulfill it, because fornication had already overtook his mind. For while Jacob our father had gone to Isaac his father, when we were in Eder, near to Ephrath in Bethlehem, Bilhah became drunk and was asleep, uncovered in her chamber. So once fornication overcomes your mind and it's sitting in your nature and in your senses, you're just waiting for the opportunity. And that's how it works. You may go on for days and be fine, but as soon as the opportunity permits itself, that fornication is going to pop right up and say, yes, we got an opportunity. Because it was never stood against. And Alahayim willing, we learn how to stand against fornication today. Having therefore gone in and beheld nakedness, so as soon as he seen the opportunity, he was gone. I wrought the impiety without her perceiving it, and leaving her sleeping, I departed. And once you get the opportunity where you think nobody's going to find out, you're going to do it. Praise Alahayim. Alahayim didn't suffer him to just get away with it. Reuben chapter 4, verse 6. For a pit unto the soul is the sin of fornication, separating it from Alahayim and bringing it near to idols. And that's exactly what's happening. When fornication enters your mind and it overtakes your mind, it separates you from Alahayim and it brings you near to idols. See, and these are things that you need to understand as far as a husband and wife. You have to understand how fornication works. You have to be on the same page of understanding so you can stand against it. Because if you don't understand it, how can you both stand against it and be a tower or defense for one another? For a pit unto the soul is the sin of fornication, separating it from Alahayim and bringing it near to idols, because it deceiveth the mind and understanding, and leadeth men into haste before their time. So it deceives the mind and understanding. The understanding is not to give yourself to fornication because it's a sin. It deceives the mind that you have to fulfill it. That's how fornication works. It works as it entered into my mind, and now I have to fulfill it, which is not true. Because if it enters into your mind, you still have a chance of fighting and standing against it. It doesn't have to overtake your senses. But being deceived and actually having that desire in you to actually want to fulfill it will cause you to only see that it's only one way to finish with that desire is to fulfill it, which is not true. So it is deceit, working with fornication, that causes you only to see one way. And that's how deceit works. Deceit only allows you to see through the scope of deceit. It doesn't allow you to see any other way. So, because it brought you near to idols, because of your desire to fulfill the fornication, it deceived your mind and your understanding. And it leads a lot of men into haze before their time, and women, because women are taken over by the spirit of fornication more than men. For many have fornication destroyed, because though a man be old or noble or rich or poor, he bringeth reproach upon himself with the sons of men, and derision with Beliar. For ye heard regarding Joseph how he guarded himself from a woman, and purged his thoughts from all fornication. Joseph purged his thoughts. Not that they didn't come, he purged them. Let's get the definition of purged. Purge means to rid something or someone of an unwanted quality, condition, or feeling. So he removed it. He removed the thought. He cast it away from himself. Like, no, that thought came, but I'm not agreeing with it. Get it far from me. And by purging his thoughts from all fornication, he found favor in the sight of Alahayim and men, because he was able to control his senses. For the Egyptian woman did many things unto him, and summoned magicians, and offered him love potions. But the purpose of his soul admitted no evil desire. That's why he was able to purge his thoughts, because he wasn't in agreement with the desire. And that's why many of us struggle to purge our thoughts from fornication, because we're actually in agreement with the desire. And we actually want to fulfill it. And for many of us, that's going to be the difference. Along with having the understanding, but the difference is going to be not admitting to no evil desire. Therefore, the Alahayim of your fathers delivered him from every evil and hidden death. For fornication overcomes not your mind, neither can Beliar overcome you. So the reason fornication couldn't overcome Joseph's mind is because he didn't have a purpose in his soul to admit the evil desire. He didn't actually want to do it. Though fornication came and attacked his mind, he didn't actually want to do it. That's why fornication couldn't overcome his mind. So fornication starts in the mind. So it's very important that we have temperance and contentment. Now, these are the things that you actually have to work on, along with your desire not to admit any evil thing or evil desire. Along with that, you have to put on temperance and contentment. And let's learn of these things. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 through 26. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. All right, those things, they free roam. They are lawless because you can use them in abundance. And they that are Christ's have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. So we have to crucify the flesh with the affections and lusts to be Christ's. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Right? So if we're going to live, say we're going to live in the Spirit, we have to walk in it, because that means we're actually living in it, right? We can't just testify with our mouths. Let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another. And that's what vainglory does. If we actually want to do it from the heart if we actually want to live in the Spirit, we're going to walk in it. But if we're desirous of vainglory, to just put on the show that we're actually doing it, but we're not, we're going to provoke one another and we're going to envy one another. You're going to provoke one another because you're going to be upset of the people that's actually doing it. And it's going to bring forth envy of the person that's actually doing it and hatred. We're not going to go all into that, but it's going to take us off of topic. Let's get the definition for temperance. Temperance is G1466, which means self-control, especially continence, temperance. All right. Now the Thayer's, that's the Strong's. The Thayer's definition means self-control in the virtue of one's master. Self-control in the virtue of one who masters his desires and passions, especially his sensual appetites. Senses, right? Remember, fornication goes into the nature of man and the senses. So self-control, the virtue of one who masters his desires and passions, especially his sensual appetites. Right? So since fornication attacks the mind, the only way we can execute temperance is to have a sound mind. Right? So you actually have to have that defense. That mind has to be strong in order to overcome fornication. All right? 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, for Alahayim hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Now, the definition for sound mind is G4995. It means discipline, that is self-control, sound mind. Now, you notice sound mind and temperance literally both have the same correlation when it comes to self-control. Though sound mind actually has more understanding as far as being disciplined, or a different understanding, not more. It has a different understanding as far as being disciplined, where temperance has more understanding of one who masters his desires or passions, especially his sensual appetites, right? So we see that they're both correlated. Now, discipline is the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment or correction, or to correct disobedience. Using punishment to correct disobedience, excuse me. All right. Discipline is the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience. Right. So when it comes to discipline or learning discipline, you have to train. It's the practice of training. So you actually have to practice. And by practicing, you're actually training to obey rules, which rules are the commandments, or a code of behavior. For us, it'll be both. A code of behavior is the fruits of the Spirit or the holy virgins, using punishment to correct disobedience. And for us, we don't punish ourselves. Alahayim is the judge. So Alahayim is going to punish us. So we actually have to put in the work to train or to practice keeping the commandments and walking in the fruits of the Spirit. So if one plays basketball, right? You're not just going to go pick up a basketball for the first time and go scrimmage with college students, college basketball players. It's not going to work out good for you. Okay? Now, if you pick up a ball for the first time and you go to a basketball court and you go and you start practicing, trying to learn how to dribble, trying to learn how to shoot, trying to get your form together, and you're practicing and you're practicing and you're getting better and better because you're practicing more, you're putting in more time, you're putting in more effort, You're learning technique. You're learning the fundamentals that's going to make you a good basketball player. Though you may have to start way at the beginning where these people have already started because you didn't see what it took for them to get to the college level, you still have to start at ground one because that's what's needful for you to be able to prosper. How long that may take you, Alahayim knows. Some it may be quicker, some it may take longer. But you still have to put in the practice and the training it takes to learn how to obey the commandments and how to keep the code of behavior and the fruits of the Spirit in the Holy Virgins. That is something that you have to do according to what is needful for you to be able to do it. You can't jump ahead without learning the foundations because it's not going to help you. You going and picking up a basketball for the first time and going and playing in the scrimmage for college students isn't helping you at all. It's just it's actually deterring you. It's discouraging you because you see how far behind you are. And that becomes the mindset that I'm so far behind, it doesn't make sense for me to do it. Instead of taking your time, picking up the ball, and just being okay with where you are. Like, man, I need to learn how to dribble. I need to learn how to shoot. I need to understand basketball. If we were okay with where we were, we would get more progress and we wouldn't be discouraged. Because then that means that envy wouldn't have a place. Because what happens is if you go and play that scrimmage game, you're going to be envious of where they are. Because the least of them is going to be greater than you. Then envy enters in. And envy sees through its feelings. Now you can't see a right in no aspect because envy, you're literally seeing out of the scope of envy in everything. Not being content or complacent with where you are and what you need to do to put in the work. And this is why we're talking about fornication and covetousness, and we're actually talking about temperance and temperance and what's it, contentment? Yes. Temperance and contentment. I'm gonna jump over to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 3 through 8. If any man teach otherwise and consent not to wholesome words, even the words of our Lord Yache Christ, and to the doctrine which is according to holiness, he is proud, knowing nothing. So this is why we have to put on that bond of meekness and humility so that we can actually learn from where we need to learn from. He is proud, knowing nothing. but doting about questions and strifes of words, whereof cometh envy, strife, railings, evil surmisings. Right? So he starts projecting. Evil surmising, you start projecting on other people. Perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds and destitute of the truth, supposing that gain is holiness, from such withdraw thyself. But holiness with contentment is great gain. Let's go back over. We're going to start back at 1 Timothy 6:3 so we can actually understand what he's actually referring to and why he got to the point where he said, but holiness with contentment is great gain, so that we can understand and apply it to what we're talking about here today. If any man otherwise, and consent not to wholesome words is start where you are. Learn what you need to learn so that you can have a foundation and be successful in Alahayim, and stop looking at everyone else. Even the words of our Lord Yache Christ, and to the doctrine which is according to holiness. So if they're not going to consent to wholesome words in the doctrine which is according to holiness, he is proud, knowing nothing. And that pride is what's going to cause you not to want to be in the place that you are, to actually start practicing and training to obey the commandments and to bring forth fruits of the Spirit and walk in the holy virgins, to work and start where you are. But doting about questions and strifes of words. So you're going to walk around asking questions that are beyond where you are, and strifes of words. You're going to be putting out stuff, putting out information because you want to seem like you're somewhere where you're not. Whereof cometh envy. So envy comes from that because you're looking at where everyone else is and you're trying to be on that same level. Strife's going to come. Railings are going to come because you're going to get offended once somebody says something that maybe disproves something that you might have brought forth. Evil surmisings, you're going to start projecting on other people. Oh, that person can't be where they really are because you're not where you really are or where you're trying to portray to be. Perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds and destitute of the truth, supposing that gain is holiness. So you start thinking that because you don't have all this knowledge, you start thinking that all this knowledge is holiness. Excuse me. You start thinking that the knowledge is holiness. And it makes you destitute of the truth. And it corrupts your mind. From such withdraw thyself. So Alahayim given us, those that are of the lowliness of mind, to withdraw ourselves from one that will operate and give place to those spirits. But holiness with contentment is great gain. So actually being content with where you are and growing and building that foundation and getting the things that's needful for you to walk uprightly is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out of it. So if I have an abundance and I don't have the things that I need for my salvation, it profiteth me nothing. And having food and raiment, let us therewith be content. So don't think upon all these physical things. Get what's needful for your salvation and be content with it. This same mindset of contentment will deliver us from all fornication, seeing that covetousness joins itself with fornication. Excuse me. Seeing that covetousness joins itself with fornication to draw you in to deceive the mind. This same mindset of contentment will deliver us from all fornication, seeing that covetousness joins itself with fornication to draw you in to deceive the mind. We're going to read Testament Naphtali chapter 3, verse 1. Be ye therefore not eager to corrupt your doings through covetousness, or with vain words to beguile your souls. So we see Naphtali. He said, don't be eager to corrupt your doings through covetousness. What corrupts your doings is fornication. Because fornication overtakes the mind, sits in the nature and senses of man, and it brings forth, and you have to fulfill the desire. And it corrupts your doings through covetousness because you actually have to desire it first. Or with vain words to beguile your soul. So remember when we were speaking about fornication, how it actually it deceiveth the mind and understanding. So with vain words to beguile your souls is actually deceit coming in. That's only allowing you to see from one perspective, from the perspective of deceit. And once that happens, you start actually convincing yourself, or the spirit starts convincing you that you have to fulfill it. It's the only thing that you can do. Now, of course, Naphtali is going to give us an understanding of what to do to not to do it. He said, because if ye keep silence in purity of heart, ye shall understand how to hold fast the will of Alahayim, and to cast away the will of Beliar. Remember, Joseph had no evil. He had his soul, the purpose of his soul admitted no evil desire. Although the thought came, Joseph didn't give heed to it. Because the purpose of his soul admitted no evil desire. He kept silence and purity of heart. He said, I'm not moving. I'm going to purge the thought because I don't want it. And it's not going to lead me. I'm going to sit right here and be quiet because I don't want to do it. And by doing that, he learned and understood how to hold fast the will of Alahayim and cast away the will of Beliar. Because the will of Beliar is to get you to go fulfill the desire. As Reuben did. Now, having understood fornication, covetousness, contentment, temperance, having understood discipline, having understood the spirits and demons that come against us when we do decide to get married, have an understanding of these things. Let's go forward so that we can actually build off of those things. The standards for men in marriage. I'm going to start at 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 33. But he that is married care for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife. Right? Now, let's understand what pleasing your wife means. Okay? But pleasing your wife should be according to the law and the fruits of the Spirit, not in material gain, for we're supposed to be content with food and raiment only, right? Those are the material things that we're supposed to be content with. So let's see exactly what it's talking about when it talks about pleasing your wife. Romans chapter 15, verse 1 and 2. We then that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak, and not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification. So, when it speaks about pleasing your wife, you're supposed to please your wife according to what's good for her in edification. What's going to be the best thing for her to serve Alahayim. So when it comes to pleasing your wife, it should be for edification of what's going to help her serve Alahayim, and that is pleasing her according to Alahayim, right? This is what we're all trying to get that foundation. We're all trying to get those core understandings so that it doesn't give place for the enemy or any of his spirits to come into the midst of our relationships. Shepherd of Hermas, Vision 2, chapter 3, verse 1. But do thou, Hermas, no longer bear a grudge against thy children, neither suffer thy sister to have her way. So Hermas is a great example. He was bearing a grudge against his children because his children wouldn't go in the way that he wanted them to go. And and neither suffered thy sister to have her way. So he was allowing his wife to do what she wanted. Because he didn't understand pleasing her. He thought that pleasing her was allowing her to do what she wanted. That they may be purified from their former sins. For they shall be chastised with a righteous chastisement, unless thou bear a grudge against them thyself. The bearing of a grudge worketh death. So because he was bearing a grudge, he wouldn't correct them. This is why why it says in Barnabas, chapter 19, verse 4, it says, Thou shalt not make a difference in a person to reprove him for a transgression. So, according to the world, just allowing a woman to do what she wants to do, it shows that you're actually bearing a grudge against her. Because the angel told Hermas not to suffer his sister to have her way. Because the way that she wanted to go wasn't Alahayim's way. And this is for many of us. We have to understand that and be that line of defense for your wife, to know that she is the weaker vessel, and to know that she is going to be taken by more evil spirits, especially the spirit of envy, which actually cuts off the heads of its victims, because envy sees through its feelings. And women are more susceptible to their feelings and their emotions. So envy has more of a place in them for them to only be seen through the lens or through the perspective of envy. So this is why it's so important to be on the same page with a woman before y'all go into a marriage. Because you want to deal with these things and come to terms with these things before you actually marry them. Because it's going to help you. So Barnabas 19:4, thou shalt not make a difference in a person to reprove him for a transgression. So you want to make sure if there's something you see, you speak about it. And don't hold your tongue, or else you're holding a grudge against them, or you're not helping them. But thou, Hermas, hast had great tribulations of thy own, by reason of the transgressions of thy family, because thou hadst no care for them. So Hermas was going through a lot himself because of the grudge he was bearing against his family by not correcting them. And it showed that he didn't care for them because he wasn't correcting them. And that is a concept of love from Alahayim. Because the concept of the world is, I'm just going to dwell with you and I'm not going to correct you because I love you. And I'm just going to continue to be with you because of the great love I have for you. But that is not what Alahayim's love is. Alahayim, it actually shows that you hate the person and that you have no care for them if you don't correct them. For thou was neglectful of them, and he was neglectful of them because he wasn't correcting them, and was mixed up with thine evil transactions. So he was more focused on making money than correcting and helping his family. So because Hermas was neglectful to edify and put his family in place, So because Hermas was neglectful to edify and put his family in a place that would help them to serve Alahayim, being more focused on his own business affairs, it showed he had no care for them. Because how does Alahayim deal with us? Alahayim deals with us when there's something that we're doing wrong. Alahayim puts us in a place for us to learn a lesson so that we can learn to do right. I'm going to jump over to Sirach chapter 33, verse 25 through 31. If thou set thy servant to labor, thou shalt find rest. So you put your servant to labor, make sure they're working, you're going to find rest because they're working. You know they're working. But if I allow you to sit idle, but if thou let him go idle, he shall seek liberty. So if I don't put them to rest, if I don't put them to labor, then I'm not going to find rest because I don't know what they're doing. I have to make sure that they're working so that I know that they're working. But if I let them go idle and I let them do whatever they want in their own free will, they're going to seek liberty and they're going to continue wanting to do their own will. And I'm not going to know what my servant is doing, nor am I going to be helping my servant to serve Alahayim, because through idleness worketh death. A yoke and a collar do bow the neck, so are tortures and torments for an evil servant. All right, so that yoke and that collar, you got to make sure that you got them on a leash to know where they are and know what they're doing. Because if not, they're going to get tortures and torments. And that shows that I didn't do what was needful to help them. Send him to labor, that he be not idle. For idleness teacheth much evil. So when we're idle and we're not laboring and putting in the work, it's going to teach much evil. And this is why when I was speaking about picking up that basketball, like if you're not going to go and put forth the practice and the training to actually obey the commandments and to bring forth fruits of the Spirit, and you're idle and you just think it's just going to come to you, you're going to learn evil. You're not going to learn holiness and righteousness. But be not excessive towards any, and without discretion do nothing. So don't be excessive, because then you're going to fall into hatred, or you're going to fall into to anger. And without discretion, do nothing. So if you don't understand what you're doing, it's better to do nothing at all. If thou have a servant, let him be unto thee as thyself, because thou hast brought him with a price. So you got a servant, treat him good, treat him nicely. Though you may have to put them in an environment or situation that's best for them to labor, you still can be nice and loving towards them, because thou hast bought them with a price. If thou have a servant, entreat him as a brother, for thou hast need of him as of thy own soul. And if thou entreat him evil, he will run from thee. And which way wilt thou go to seek him? All right. So this can be a servant, this can be a wife, this can be your children. You gotta entreat them as a brother or a sister. Though you may have to put them in environments or situations, or put them to labor of something that's going to help them, you still have to love them and treat them well. And this mindset is confirmed in Colossians and 1 Peter. So let's go ahead and get the confirmations. Colossians chapter 3, verse 19. Husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. Right? So love your wives and be not bitter against them. Like Hermas was bitter against his wife, and he let her have her way. So it actually shows that we're bitter against them when we're not correcting them, and we're not putting them to labor, and we're allowing them to be idle. 1 Peter 3 and 7. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Here again, we see the understanding and mindset being confirmed to dwell with them according to knowledge, and pleasing them unto edification, to further them in the faith. And that's the goal. So let us not be bitter to do the work, to hold a grudge against anything they may have done, but dwell with them according to knowledge, knowing that it's your duty to get it right yourself, so that you may instruct and teach her the way she should go. Because if not, if you bear a grudge, your prayers will be hindered. So you're going to end up falling into a hard, tough place, just as Hermas did. Right? Remember, it said Hermas, Hermas had great tribulations of his own, and by reason of the transgressions of his family, because he had no care for them. So Hermas was going through transgressions, and his prayers were hindered. So we don't want that. So let's please our wives unto edification, and put them in places, or put them to labor as what is sufficient for them, to help them serve Alahayim and not be idle. Hermas Mandate 10, chapter 3, verse 2. For the intercession of a sad man has never at any time power to ascend to the altar of Alahayim. Wherefore say I, doeth not the intercession of him that is saddened ascend to the altar? Because, saith he, sadness is seated at his heart. The sadness mingled with intercession doeth not suffer the intercession to ascend pure to the altar. For as vinegar, when mingled with wine in the same vessel, hath not the same pleasant taste, so likewise sadness mingled with the Holy Spirit hath not the same intercession. So no matter what's going on between your wife and a husband, between a husband and a wife, no matter what's going on, you can't give place to sadness. You can't give place to a grudge that'll make you operate in sadness. Because if you holding a grudge, you are saddened by the way that they're treating you. And that is going to hinder your intercession. It's going to hinder your prayer. Okay? So we have to be forgiving. Though someone may do something that's wrong, or whatever the case is, you still have to forgive from the heart, because it's only going to make you sad if you don't. And it's going to hinder your intercession. It's going to hinder your prayers. And then you're going to start treating that person differently, or you're going to be neglectful toward that person because of the way you feel about them. The poor and humble in spirit, Alahayim hears. So this is going to help us to be mindful of how, excuse me, this is going to be helpful to help us be mindful of staying on the right track. Sirach 21:5. A prayer out of a poor man's mouth reaches to the ears of Alahayim, and his judgment cometh speedily. Now, it's not just speaking about a poor man like you don't have substance. It's talking about poor as in meek and lowly. So don't be embittered by anything that they may do in spite or ignorance. Just pray unto Alahayim that will hear your prayers to come help the situation. So don't be spiteful, right? Excuse me. Don't get embittered, excuse me. Don't get embittered, even if they may do something that's spiteful or in ignorance. Don't be embittered, because it's not going to help your prayers. So just pray to Alahayim and let Alahayim help. That's why he said his judgment coming speedily. So don't get embittered. Just go and pray and put your hope in Alahayim, that your prayers are going to actually turn their heart and make them see their faults. Sirach chapter 10, verse 21. The fear of the Lord goeth before the obtaining of authority, but roughness and pride is the losing thereof. So the fear of the Lord goes before overcoming these evil spirits. It's actually the fear of Alahayim and humbling yourself and being in that meek and quiet spirit that's actually going to go before obtaining the authority. But roughness and pride is the losing thereof. So if you take matters into your own hands, things are going to fall apart. Sirach chapter 21, verse 4. To terrify and do wrong will waste riches. Thus the house of proud men shall be made desolate. So you take things into your own hands, trying to terrify and do wrong, you're gonna waste away everything yourself. So just pray about it, leave it in the hands of Alahayim, and Alahayim, his judgment is gonna come quickly. Proverbs 15:25, Ahayah will destroy the house of the proud. So it's the husband's job to succor the wife and lead her unto Alahayim, but it takes humility to humble yourself under Alahayim, to seek guidance, to be led yourself. Because being a husband doesn't mean that you are leading the household. It means that you are interceding for the household. It means that you are seeking Alahayim to be led, for Alahayim to lead your household. not for you to lead your household. It's nothing about pride. It's nothing about first places. It's nothing about glory. It's about humbleness of men and humility and meekness. Your job is to seek Alahayim to lead you, while your wife is seeking you to lead her by being led by Alahayim, being led by Yache specifically. Now, love has to be from both parties, husband and wife. The Testament of God, chapter 6, verse 3. Love ye therefore one another from the heart. Love ye therefore one another from the heart. From the heart. You have to know what love is to love somebody from the heart. And if a man sin against thee, cast forth the poison of hate and speak peaceably to him. So don't get embittered. If one of y'all does wrong, don't get embittered. And the nice soul hold not guile. So don't act like you okay when you're not. You understand? If a man sin against thee, cast forth the poison of hate and speak peaceably to him. Cast that hate away, however, that embitterment, that grudge, cast it away and speak peaceably to him or her. And in thy soul hold not guile. So don't just speak peaceably, knowing that you ain't cast away that poison of hate. And if he confess and repent, or if she confess and repent, forgive her or him. But if he deny it or she deny it, don't get into a passion with him. Least catching the poison from thee, he take the swearing, and so thou sin doubly. So you get offended because they didn't receive it, and you sin. He or she may not receive it. Don't get into a passion because they didn't receive what you brought forth. At least they catch that poison from you, from the passion that you get from being offended that they didn't receive it, and they take the swearing, and y'all get into a fight, and both of y'all sin. Testament of God, chapter 4, verse 5. For love would quicken even the dead, and would call them that are condemned to die. So love can do that. Love can save your partner. So hatred would slay the living, and those that had sinned venially, it would suffer not to live. So when hatred is in the midst of your relationship, every little thing you do that's wrong, it's going to be a problem. If you do one little thing wrong, if you sin venially, it would not suffer to live. They're not gonna allow you to live it down. They're gonna remember it and they're gonna hold it and they're never gonna let it go. That's hatred. For the spirit of hatred worketh together with Satan through hastiness of spirit. So we see once a person is hasty, or they're quickly tempered, or they're quick to bring up something that you've done wrong, In any instance, it's the same hatred. In all things to men's death. But the spirit of love worketh together with the law of Alahayim, and long suffering unto the salvation of men. They're going to bring forth, if they're walking in the spirit of love, they're going to bring forth the law. And that long suffering that they have for you, they're going to say, let's just keep the commandments. Let's work on that. And it's going to help bring salvation in the household. Now, standards for women in marriage. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. So let's get the definition of desire. It's H8669 in the original sense of stretching out after, a longing desire. So it gave a very descriptive definition, like in the original sense of stretching out after. So that means that you're constantly trying to follow or reach out to touch your husband. Or stretching out after. So wherever your husband is going, that should be your desire. First Corinthians 7:34. Right? Because it also said that he shall rule over you. There's a difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. So here we go with the same word for please, right? Pleasing her husband. So she's supposed to do what's good for edification toward her husband, or what's good for being a tower of defense for her husband. So we see the same standard for the wife to please her husband according to the law and fruits of the Spirit. This is the accountability for both parties to please each other in righteousness. So how can a wife do this? We're going to jump over to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22 through 33. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. Submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. We're going to get the definition of submit. Submit means to subordinate, reflectively to obey, be under obedience or obedient. Put under, subdue unto, be subject, make subject unto, be subject unto, be put in subjection, be in subjection, be put in subjection to, submit self unto, be put in subjection under, submitting self unto. So whether you're doing it or you need to do it. So it says to be subject to or to make subject unto. So depending on where you are, you're either in subjection or you need to be in subjection. And that's what you need to work on. So you can subordinate yourself to your husband. That's why in Genesis it said a longing, a reaching out unto, let's say, stretching out after, because you're supposed to submit yourself to your husband. You're supposed to submit yourself to them, or be subject unto them, or subordinate yourself unto them. Subordinate means to put yourself under. So wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. Now, that would be very difficult for a wife to submit herself unto a husband if she doesn't know how to submit herself unto Alahayim nor her father, as we spoke of at the beginning of the lesson. So you see how important it is for the things that Reuben was actually telling us to do, and why it's important when it comes to you getting into a relationship. Because if you didn't learn these things with your father, then it's going to be hard for you to do them for your husband and Alahayim. It's going to be hard for you to keep the commandments. It's going to be hard for you to bring forth fruits of the Spirit, because you've never learned how to submit yourself to anything. And that's why Hermas got in trouble for allowing his wife to have her way, because he had to teach her how to submit, because her father didn't teach her either. And for many of us here in this day and age, it's the same way. The father didn't teach the daughter how to submit unto Alahayim nor himself. So now the husband has to come and teach the wife how to be submissive. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the savior of the body. So the husband has to come and save the wife and teach her. He's actually teaching her, and that's what's actually saving her. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. So the wife actually has to be subject in every part of her life, not just the parts that she sees as fit, and keeping the parts that she wants. She actually has to go in the direction her husband wants her to go in every aspect of her life. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. And for the husbands, you have to give yourself for your wife. You have to teach her and put her in positions and environments that's going to be suitable for her edification. And it's going to help her serve Alahayim. That's what Yache did. He came and he put himself and put the disciples in situations and edified them and did all things unto edification for them. He gave himself for the work. He didn't just neglect them and have no care for them and go on and go make money and work on other business. He actually put in the work to make sure that they got where they needed to be successful, to serve Alahayim. And this is your job, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. So you got to do all things for edification, and you have to put your servants in places that it's going to be beneficial for them to learn. to not be idle. Put them to labor so that they're not idle. Now the goal is that he may present it to himself a glorious church, not having a spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So that's the goal that you want. You put in the work because you want them to be holy without blemish. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. So by wanting to see her be without blemish and wanting to see yourself be without blemish, by wanting to see yourself without blemish, by wanting to see yourself without blemish, it shows that you love your wife because you want to see her without blemish as well. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of this body, for we are members of his body, and of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, that they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband. So it's unto the man to love his wife by putting her to labor and not allowing her to be idle, and doing all things unto edification for her so that she can learn and grow to be without spot. And it's for the wife to reverence her husband by submitting herself unto his leadership so that he can lead her and that she may be obedient in everything and subject to her own husband in everything. That's the reverence of the wife, to be subject unto her husband in everything. Now, the word for reverence is G5399. It means to frighten, that is passively to be alarmed. By analogy, to be in awe of, that is reverence. To be sore afraid or be afraid, fear exceedingly or fear or reverence. So the husband has to teach the wife the wife has to learn reverence, Yes, the husband has to teach the wife, but it's unto the wife to actually learn reverence, because she has to learn reverence for her husband, and that same reverence, she has to learn to serve Alahayim and be a fear of Alahayim. Because if the wife has no fear of Alahayim, and she's not fearful to sin or to do wrong according to Alahayim's commandments and the fruits of the Spirit, then she's not going to reverence her husband either. She's not going to have any fear towards him to do right unto him. And this is why it's so important for men who have daughters to teach your daughter reverence so that she can learn to reverence Alahayim and reverence you being her father, so that if she does get a husband, she'll already understand reverence. She'll already have a fear of doing wrong. Now, Barnabas chapter 19 and 7 goes on to say, Thou shalt be subject unto thy masters as to a type of Alahayim in shame and fear. That's that same reverence, that same fear. And that shame is humility. Thou shalt be subject unto thy masters as to a type of Alahayim. So this is that same reverence for Alahayim as you will have for your husband. Thou shalt not command in bitterness thy bondservant or thy handmaid who set their hope on the same Alahayim. So this can go for the husband or the wife, because a husband can have a bondservant and the wife can have a handmaid. So this is that same fear, that same reverence for Alahayim that you're supposed to have, so that you treat all men and women with that same reverence. Thou shalt not command in bitterness thy bondservant or thy handmaid who set their hope on the same Alahayim, lest haply they should cease to fear Alahayim, who is over both of you, because you're representing Alahayim through your works. So they may cease to fear that Alahayim because they see the bad works that you're bringing forth through your own bitterness, because you don't want to be in shame and fear, being lifted up. For he came not to call with respect to persons, but to call those whom the Spirit hath prepared. So the Spirit is preparing those, and the Spirit is coming to make sure that we're humble and we're meek. But Alahayim has no respect to persons. So if you don't take heed to that Spirit, then Alahayim is going to be the judge. Now, for many of us, for many of the women, struggling with emotions and feelings, being led by the spirit of envy, causes much strife and much reproach for you guys. Did I put that in here? I need to. One moment. Thought I did. Pause real quick. All right. Now, many women desire to be a virtuous wife or a virtuous woman. But let's see the things that's hindering that. Because many women struggle with their emotional and their feelings. And let's see what plays on that. What spirit plays on that. We're going to jump into the Testament of Solomon, chapter 43 and 44. But I, Solomon, glorified Ahayah, and bade another demon come before me. And there was brought to me a demon having all the limbs of a man, but without a head. And I, seeing him, said to him, Tell me, who art thou? And he answered, I am a demon. Okay. So, very first, we're learning characteristics, okay? Solomon asked the demon a very straight question. Tell me, who art thou? And the demon answered and said, I am a demon. Did the demon answer the question? No, he did not, because right after that, Solomon said, So I said to him, which? Like, you didn't actually answer my question. And that's the same spirit that comes forth from this demon. That's the same works or characteristics, that it's hard to get a straight answer. And he answered, I am a demon. So I said to him, which? And he answered me, I am called envy. So we're learning the characteristics of these demons, that when it's hard to just for someone to give a straight answer, a yay or a nay, or just to be very straight and just give an answer, we know that envy is envious is in the it's in the vessel. We know that envy has place. For I delight to devour heads, being desirous to secure for myself a head. But I do not eat enough, but I'm anxious to have such a head as thou hast. So envy takes the head. That means that envy takes the eyes, the ears, the mind. Envy takes every part of the head, the mouth. That's why you see it was hard to give a straight answer, which comes from the mouth. I, Solomon, on hearing this, sealed him, stretching out my hand against his chest, whereon the demon leapt up and threw himself down and gave a groan, saying, Woe is me! Yeah, please don't take this stuff lightly. Please don't take it lightly. This demon, the person's gonna end up being the victim all the time. I, Solomon, on hearing this, sealed him, stretching out my hand against his chest. All Solomon did was put his hand on his chest. And the demon leapt up and threw himself down and gave a groan, saying, Woe is me. Everything was dramatized. Characteristics of envy. And when this spirit comes upon you, you're going to do the same thing. Woe is me. Where am I come to? And then look what it did after. O traitor Onias, I cannot see. So because he was there in a situation that it didn't want to be in, it was someone else's fault. Oh, traitor Onias, I cannot see. Like, you're not here, but I'm here, and I'm having to deal with this because you traded on me. Someone else has to be to blame. So I said to him, I am Solomon. Tell me, tell me then, how doest thou manage to see? And he answered me, by means of my feelings. So envy is driven by its feelings. It sees by its feelings, it hears by its feelings, it speaks by its feelings. It thinks by its feelings. And when envy enters into you or any person, it's going to see by means of its feelings. Your whole perspective is going to be based off of your feelings, whether your thoughts, whether your speech, whether you're hearing, whether you're seeing, because it takes the whole head. I then, Solomon, having heard his voice come up to me, I asked how he managed to speak. And he answered me, I, O King Solomon, am holy voice, for I have inherited the voices of many men. This spirit has inherited the voices of many men. This is why you really don't know where a person is or who a person is, because they would change the way they speak based off of how they're feeling. Or in the case of all men who are called dumb, I it is who smashed their heads. And when they were children and had reached their 8th day, then when a child is crying in the night, I become a spirit and glide by means of his voice. In the crossways, I also have many services to render, and my encounter is fraught with harm. So envy literally links itself with hatred. For I grasped in all instants a man's head, and with my hands, as with a sword, I cut it off and put it on to myself. And in this way, by means of the fire which is in me, right? So there goes that anger. There goes that anger and hatred. And in this way, by means of the fire which is in me, through my neck it is swallowed up. And it is that sends grave mutilations and incurable on men's feet and inflicts sores. So envy attacks the feet too. That's usually after envy has been in you for a while, that it'll start attacking your feet. It's another distinction. And this is being brought up because many women struggle with your emotions and your feelings and seeing through your feelings more than men. Not saying that it's something that men don't do, but it's more than men. Men are more logical, while women are more emotional. And this is why women have to really submit and cleave unto their husbands in everything. Because if you don't, these spirits are waiting to get you, as we learn with Eve, as we learn with Sarah, and so on and so forth. Like, women have to understand that they are the weaker vessel and they need to be protected. Not only in the physical, but in the spiritual. Because for us men, we want to bring you forth without spot and without blemish to Alahayim, and that's our objective, so that you're actually a virtuous wife. Now let's read if a woman actually submits herself to her husband in everything, she's going to bring forth fruit because she's going to follow after his guidance in the things that he may see that she may need to work on so that she can be without spot and without blemish to Alahayim. I'm going to go to Sirach chapter 26, verse 1. Excuse me. Blessed is the man that hath a virtuous wife, for the number of his days shall be doubled. Right? Because he's not going to have to go through all the afflictions that at that time. You're not going to have to go through all those afflictions and all those, have to deal with all those different spirits that come forth that are going to trouble his soul. Virtuous means having or showing high moral standards, chaste, right? And high moral standards, that means that you're keeping the commandments and you're bringing forth fruits of the Spirit, and the holy virgins are with you. A virtuous woman rejoiceth her husband, and he shall fulfill the years of his life in peace. Why is he going to fulfill the years of his life in peace? Because he's not going to be dealing with evil spirits and demons. She's going to rejoice him because he doesn't have to deal with that. A good wife is a good portion, which shall be given in the portion of them that fear the Lord. So this is why Reuben was explaining for you to focus on your flocks, focus on your works, focus on Alahayim, because if you fear Alahayim, Alahayim's going to give you a good wife and a good portion. Whether a man be rich or poor, if he have a good heart toward Alahayim, he shall at all times rejoice with a cheerful countenance. Sirach chapter 26 and 13. The grace of a wife delighteth her husband, and her discretion will fatten his bones. The word grace is G5485. Graciousness as gratifying. Of manner or act. All right, so the manner in which she carries herself, right? As we just read, virtuous means having high moral standards. The manner or act, abstract or concrete, literal, figurative, or spiritual, especially the divine influence upon the heart. So it starts in the heart. The divine influence upon the heart and its reflection in the life. That's what brings forth the grace of a wife that's going to delight her husband. The divine influence upon the heart and its reflection in the life. So her having that fear of Alahayim, willing to submit to Alahayim, is actually going to have that divine influence upon the heart and this reflection in the life, because that divine influence of her submitting herself to Alahayim is going to have a reflection in the life, and she's going to have that same reverence toward her husband as Alahayim, including gratitude, accept, benefit, favor, grace, gift, gracious, joy, liberality, pleasure, thanks, or thankworthy. So the grace of a wife delighteth her husband. The divine influence upon her heart and its reflection in his life delighteth her husband, and her discretion will fatten his bones. Because she's not going to give herself over to evil spirits, because she has that discretion. I hope this is really clicking for you guys to actually understand. Sirach chapter 26, verse 14, 15, and 16. A silent and loving woman is a gift of the Lord, and there is nothing so much worth as a mind well instructed. Now look at that. A silent and loving woman is a gift of the Lord, and there is nothing so much worth as a mind well instructed. That means that she had to submit herself and reverence her husband to be able to be well instructed. Because if she is going in her own way, like Hermes, she's not going to be well instructed if he's letting her have her way. So you see how Alahayim is actually teaching us for the order of a household to be between a husband and wife. A shamefaced and faithful woman is a double grace, and a continent mind cannot be valued. So once she gets to the point where she's hearkening and the husband is actually teaching her, and he got her to the point where she's without spot or blemish, her continent mind cannot be valued. It's priceless, but it takes a lot of work to get there. Continent means the ability to control feelings, especially sexual desires. Because we've already shown that women are more emotional. They're more emotionally driven. They're dealing with their feelings more. So you see, even right here in Sirach, a shamefaced and faithful woman is a double grace, and her continent mind cannot be valued. Which continent is the ability to control feelings, especially sexual desires. Seeing that a woman struggles more with her feelings and emotions, and also a woman struggles with fornication more than men. See how Alahayim is actually showing the things that actually make a woman valuable in his sight. It's opposite of the world. As the sun when it ariseth in the high heaven, so with the beauty of a good wife in the ordering of her house. Now, if a woman has a continent mind where she's able to control her feelings and her sexual desires, isn't she going to order her house well? Because her decisions aren't going to be made through feelings. Isn't the ordering of her house going to be well because she submits herself to her husband? And a reverence for her husband, that she actually is doing what he commands for her to do and everything. These things are going to actually help the household. And because of that, when she gets to a place where she is a virtuous wife, that man is going to be confident to build a house with her. He's going to be confident to have children, that knowing that the children are going to be in a good space. They're going to be secure. They're going to be in a place where somebody's going to take care of them and going to lead them the right direction. They're not going to have doubts or worry that she's going to be emotional in the house and afflicting the children. Sirach 26 and 19 through 21. My son, keep the flower of thine age sound, and give not thy strength to strangers. When thou hast gotten a fruitful possession through all the field, sow it with thy own seed, trusting in the goodness of thy stock. So thy race which thou leavest shall be magnified, having the confidence of their good descent. Men, righteous men, want to have confidence of their good descent. They want to have confidence that the children are going to be led the right way when they leave the house. The wife who's supposed to be ordering the house, they want to have confidence that the children they're going to have good descent, that they're going to be led the right direction. They're not going to have bad examples. They're going to have a wife that's going to be showing and teaching the children the things that she's learned from her husband, and that she's not going to be teaching them giving place for evil spirits to be in the house. That's what a righteous man is looking for. Sirach chapter 36, verse 23 through 25. If there be kindness, meekness, and comfort in her tongue, then it's not her husband like other men. Now look at that. Look at that. If there be kindness, meekness, and comfort in her tongue, then it's not her husband like other men. We just seen how Asmodeus was operating. Do you think that these parables are talking about a woman that's dealing in the evil spirit or a demon? We can see here that he's talking about the fruits of the spirit: kindness, meekness, comfort in her tongue, in her speech, because Asmodeus was opposite. So then it's not her husband like other men, because other men, their wives are dealing in evil spirits and demons. He that getteth a wife beginneth a possession. So when you get a wife, that's the beginning of you having to put in the work. You got to put in the work and set her to labor and get her to the place where she is without spot and without blemish. A help like unto himself and a pillar of rest. So eventually that's what you're going to have if you put in the work. Where no hedge is, there the possession is spoiled. So where no hedge of protection is, where you're not actually putting in the work to edify your wife, to please her in edification, to actually not allow her to have her way, to teach her the reverence and submitting herself in everything toward her husband, and the wife has to put in the work too, that her desire may be unto her husband and that she may submit herself in reverence. She has to put in the work to keep the commandments, to bring forth fruits of the Spirit. Where no hedge of protection is, or no hedge is, there the possession is spoiled. And the only way there can be no hedge of protection there is if you're bitter against your wife or you're holding a grudge. And he that hath no wife will wander up and down mourning. The possession will be spoiled if we don't edify and put our wives in environments where she can grow and learn. For evil spirits attend upon them because of their lack of continence and controlling their emotions, and many women fall into witchcraft and manipulation because of those evil spirits and demons. Testament of Reuben, chapter 5, verse 1. For evil are women, my children. So many women fall into evil. And since they have no power or strength over a man, so because physically they don't have power or strength to overtake a man, they use wiles by outward attractions, right? So they use their looks that they may draw him to themselves. And whom they cannot bewitch by outward attractions. So whom they can't get by lust, by somebody lusting after the way they look, him they overcome by craft. So if they can't get the one they want by their looks, they're going to witchcraft. And that's when they go into manipulation and witchcraft, the acts of witchcraft, the actual potions and spells, because they don't have strength over a man. So they go into what they think gives them power. For moreover, concerning them, the angel of the Lord told me and taught me that women are overcome by the spirit of fornication more than men, and in their heart they plot against men, and by means of their adornment they deceive first their minds, and by the glance of the eye they instill the poison, and then through the accomplished act they take them captive. For women cannot force a man openly, but by a harlot's bearing she beguiles him. And that's what we're seeing in the world today, where you see all these women barely wearing clothes, all on social media. It's the same evil. And many of them are dealing in witchcraft, and they're using their outward attractions to beguile men. A harlot's bearing. And many of these women are the women that men are falling to lust after. And Alahayim forbid us here at this church, at Hebrew Readers Church, we're falling to lust after and taking a wife from such a woman, taking a wife from such a woman. But many of us, we may be in these predicaments where we have a wife like this. Many of our wives may be already practicing such works. But don't bear a grudge against them. But please them unto edification to help them understand to come out of such works. And if it's Alahayim's will, he'll turn their hearts. If not, then Alahayim will guide you. If she go not the way you will have her, you have to cut her off from your flesh. It's just what it is. Ignatius the Polycarp, chapter 5, verse 1. Flee evil arts. So all those arts of witchcraft and manipulation, all those things that are witchcraft, rebellion is as witchcraft. Flee those evil things. Or rather hold thou discourse about these. So let's hold the discourse about these. Flee those evil arts, and let's talk about these things. Tell my sisters to love the Lord and to be content with their husbands in the flesh and in spirit. Tell my sisters to love the Lord and to be content with their husbands in flesh and in spirit. In like manner also charge my brothers I don't think that's written right. In like manner also charge my brothers. Oh, there you go. Okay, my bad. I'm reading it wrong. In like manner also charge my brothers in the name of Yache Christ to love their wives as the Lord loved the church. It starts with love. It starts and it ends with love. That's the only thing that's going to turn somebody from doing wrong. And through that love, Sirach 40 and 23, a friend and a companion never meet amiss. Right? So when you have that true friend, no matter how long y'all been away from each other, y'all gonna come back together. And y'all never meet amiss. It's just like day one. But above both is a wife with her husband. So when a wife and a husband agree, and y'all have that same perspective and understanding, it's above a friend. Sirach 25 and 1. In three things I was beautified. This is the Holy Spirit. and stood up beautiful before Alahayim and men. The unity of brethren, the love of neighbors, a man and a wife that agree together. This is the goal for both the husband and the wife, to have the same understanding and faith in word and deed in the law and fruits of the Spirit, to agree together and walk together. But if the husband and wife cannot agree and get on the same page to come out of the spirits against Alahayim's nature, what should we do? 1 Corinthians 7 and 10 through 16. But unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord. Let not the wife depart from her husband, and if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband. And let not the husband put away his wife, but to rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother hath a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. And if the wife which hath a husband that believeth not, and he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy. But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but Alahayim hath called us to peace. For what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband? Or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? Polycarp to the Philippians, chapter 44, verse 2, And then our wives also, to walk in the faith that hath been given unto them in love and purity, cherishing their own husbands in all truth, and loving all men equally in all chastity, and to train their children in the training of the fear of Alahayim. And this is why a woman has to understand that fear, that reverence, because she can't train the children in the reverence of Alahayim if she doesn't reverence Alahayim. There's no way that she can teach them something that she doesn't understand or do herself. So let's get instruction for wives that are keeping the faith and men that are unbelieving or struggling, so that wives can understand what to do in all different scenarios. The same applies, Barnabas chapter 19, verse 4. Thou shalt not make a difference in a person to reprove him for a transgression. So whether you have an unbelieving spouse or a struggling spouse, you still have to speak when they do something that's not right. That's why if they're pleased to dwell with you, then you can stay, because that means that you can have open conversations about things that they may be doing that's wrong, according to Alahayim. If they do a transgression, if they're pleased to dwell with you and there's something that offends you, they should love you to not do it. And that's actually how you would actually save your husband or your wife, because over time, eventually they will be keeping the commandments unless they depart. Because when you reprove them for something that they do that's wrong and they change it, though they may not understand what they're doing, they may not understand they're keeping the commandments. They just think they're doing something that is needful, is something that's offending you, or something that isn't making you feel well, which it isn't. But at the same time, it's not making you feel well because it's breaking the commandment of Alahayim, and it's not good. Alahayim's commandments are good. So if they're doing something that you're approving them of that is an offense to you, or something that is hurting you, then it only helps them to learn if they stop doing it. And this is why in 1 Peter 3 and 1, Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, so they're unbeliever, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives. And that word conversation means manner of life, so the way that you are operating. While they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear. So when you have that conversation with them to talk to them about it, they're gonna be won by the way that you're operating. Whose adorning? Let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair, or a wearing of gold, or a putting on of apparel. But let it be the hidden man of the heart. So the hidden man of the heart is the one that's actually walking in love and keeping the commandments and bringing forth fruits of the Spirit. That's what the man is staying for, because of the way that the good spirits that you're operating in. Even an ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of Alahayim of great price. So let these beautiful spirits, the spirit of Alahayim, the spirit of the fruits of the Spirit and the holy virgins, let those spirits be the spirits that the man is seeing. It's not about the way you look. It's about the spirits that you're allowing to be in your vessel. For after this manner, in old time, the holy women also, who trusted in Alahayim, adorned themselves, being in subjection to their own husbands. That's the adorning. The righteousness is the adorning of being in subjection to your own husband and doing what's right, being in subjection to Alahayim. Even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as you do well and are not afraid with any amazement. So you make sure you do well and don't be afraid to do well, no matter the environment or who you're around. First Peter chapter 3, verse 8 through 11. Finally, be ye all of one mind, having compassion one of another. Love as brethren, be pitiful, be courteous. Right? So these are the things that you have to do in a relationship. You have to be of one mind, having compassion one of another. Love as brethren, be pitiful and courteous. Not rendering evil for evil. So not taking on a grudge. Or railing for railing. Not getting upset and taking the poison from one another. But contrariwise, blessing. Knowing that ye are thereunto called, that ye should inherit a blessing. So if I forgive and I speak peaceably, then I'm going to receive the same thing from Alahayim. For he that will love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil, and his lips that they speak no guile. So be honest. And if something's going on, be honest. Don't act like everything's okay, but you really got a problem. Let him eschew evil and do good. Let him seek peace and ensue it. And by being honest, you're eschewing evil and doing good. And you're seeking peace and ensuing it. Because the honesty is what brings forth the peace. If the woman keep the instructions of the Lord and not walk being led by her feelings and own desires, what will it bring forth? 2 Clement chapter 12, verse 2 and 3. For the Lord himself being asked by a certain person when his kingdom would come. All right. So this is Yache. We're going to see what Yache is going to say when the kingdom is going to come. And he said, when two shall be one, and the outside as the inside, and the male with the female, neither male or female. When two shall be one, when two shall have the same mind, and the outside as the inside. Remember, Alahayim said, don't just clean the outside of the cup, but clean the inside of the cup, and the outside shall be clean also. So that means that we're actually going to be keeping the commandments and bringing forth fruits of the Spirit, and we're not going to be hypocrites. And the male with the female, neither male or female. So everybody's going to be walking in the mindset of Alahayim. Women aren't going to be given over to their emotions. They're going to be continent. They're going to be able to control their emotions and their feelings. And then both male and female will both be looking according to things from the outlook and perspective of Alahayim only, and not according to any evil demon or evil spirit. Now the two are one when we speak truth among ourselves. There it goes. The two are one when we speak truth among ourselves. So when there's no evil spirit in the midst, the two are one. When Asmodeus isn't in the midst, when envy isn't in the midst, when any other demon or spirit isn't in the midst, and it's truth, the two become one. And in two bodies, there shall be one soul without dissimulation. So though there are two bodies, they're one soul without dissimulation. That means, let me get the definition of dissimulation. This dissimulation means concealment of one's thoughts, feelings, or character, pretense. So, and in two bodies there shall be one soul without, what's the word? Deceit. Dissimulation is deceit. The concealment of one's thoughts, feelings, or character, which is deceit. Because you're not being honest and you're not being who you really are. That's when Yache's kingdom is going to come. And by both male and female walking uprightly and not being driven by emotions or feelings or deceit, but walking in the ordinance of the Lord, speaking truth with no lies or deceit, what fruit will be brought forth? Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15. But speaking the truth in love, because if you're not speaking the truth and you're lying, hatred and lying, hatred cleaves unto, lying cleaves unto hatred. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. Made it with lying. Okay. So hatred. So lying, for it constantly made it with lying. Hatred made it with lying. So hatred made it with lying. But speaking the truth in love may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. So by doing these things and actually speaking the truth in love, whereas a lie mates with hatred, which is the opposite. If we actually do speak truth in love, we're going to grow up into Yache in all things. We're going to be like our donor. But we have things, many of us have things to overcome. And instead of picking up that basketball and starting from where we are, we'd rather be far ahead where we feel everyone else is. It's the same envy. Now, Alahayim knows that mindset. I'm going to jump over to Isaiah chapter 30, verse 8 through 12. Now go, write it before them in a table, and note it in a book, that it may be for the time to come, forever and ever. That this is a rebellious people, lying children that will not hear the law of the Lord. So with that same rebellion, that same witchcraft that causes us to lie, and we won't hear the law of Alahayim, which say to the seers, see not. So it tells they tell the prophets, don't see anything. And to the prophets, prophesy not unto us right things. So don't tell us things that are right. Don't tell us the things that's gonna reprove us or gonna make us have to change. But speak unto us smooth things. Tell us things that make us feel good about where we are. Make us feel better. Make us feel like we're actually doing something right when we're not. Prophesy deceits. Like conceal it. What was it? Conceal thoughts, feelings, and the character of Alahayim. Allow us to feel good. Prophesy deceits. Tell us that we're putting in the work, knowing we know we're not putting in the work. Get you out of the way. Turn aside out of the path. Cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. And that's what they want to be done. If the person comes and speaks smooth things and prophesies deceits, they want you to go out of the way. They want you to turn aside out of the path, to cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. Because that's what's going to happen. Yache and Alahayim, they're going to depart. And if that happens, wherefore thus saith the Holy One of Israel, because ye despise this word, and trust in oppression and perverseness, and stay thereon. So you despised Allah's commandments because you didn't actually want to keep them, or you wanted to be a hypocrite and act like you are keeping them, but you're really not. You trust in oppression and perverseness. So you trust in evil spirits because you have pleasure in them. You have pleasure in the fornication, in the envy, in the deceit, in the lies, in the pride, in the wrath, in the anger. And stay thereon. You continue doing it. And for many of us, we fear we can't change because we don't want to let go of the evil we have pleasure in. Because of the lack of fear we have towards Alahayim, the lack of reverence we have towards Alahayim. But as Sirach 10:21 says, the fear of the Lord goeth before the obtaining of authority. So until you actually submit yourself and have that reverence unto Alahayim, to have that fear not to do anything wrong in his sight, you're not going to obtain the authority over the evil spirits. But roughness and pride is the losing thereof. So when you're being rough and prideful, you're going to lose the authority of the evil spirits, and they're going to have dominion over you. And we have an example of this mindset. All right, we're going to go into a parable so we can gain understanding of this roughness and prideful mindset that causes us to lose the obtaining of authority, to overcome the spirits of iniquity. Going to jump over to Luke chapter 19, verse 12 through 27, so that we can see this mindset and see it in real life, so we can actually have a real example to examine ourselves, to make sure that we're not in this mindset. And if we are, to change it. He said, therefore, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. And he called his 10 servants and delivered them 10 pounds and said unto them, occupy till I come. But his citizens hated him and sent a message after him, saying, we will not have this man to reign over us. And it came to pass that when he was returned, having received the kingdom, then he commanded these servants to be called unto him, to whom he had given the money, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. Then came the first, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 10 pounds. So the first servant, he put in the work. Though all the citizens hated the master, he still put in the work. He wasn't a respecter of persons. Then the first came saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 10 pounds. And he said unto him, well, thou good servant, because thou hast been faithful in a very little, thou authority over 10 cities. And the second came, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 5 pounds. And he said likewise to him, be thou also over 5 cities. And another came, saying, Lord, behold, here is thy pound, which I have kept laid up in a napkin. For I feared thee, because thou art an austere man. Thou takest up that thou layest not down, and reapest that thou didst not sow. And he saith unto him, out of thy own mouth will I judge thee, thou wicked servant. Thou knowest that I was an austere man, taking up that I laid not down, and reaping that I did not sow. All right, we're going to slow it down real quick. Okay. The first servant did the work. There was no projection, there was no anything. The second did the work. No projection. The third came, and the first came, the second came, both of them had a servant mindset. And the reason why I say they had a servant mindset is because they went and did the work. And they didn't put themselves on the same pedestal as their master. And I'm going to explain why. And the third came, and another came, saying, Lord, behold, here is thy pound which I have kept laid up in a napkin. For I feared thee, because thou art an austere man. Projection. He just made a grievous forecast. And he justified it. Because I feared you, I didn't put in the work. And I made a projection of you that you're an austere man. And the reason I came to that projection is because thou takest up that thou layest not down, and reapest that thou didst not sow. So I didn't go put in the work because I'm putting myself on the same playing field as you because I want to be the master. Because you're not working, I'm not going to work. So I'm giving you back that same pound that you gave me. I didn't do the work. You take up where you don't lay down and reap it where you don't sow. And I do the same. I'm doing the same as you. So what did his master say to him? And he saith unto him, out of thy own mouth will I judge thee, thou wicked servant. That servant had projected upon him. That's why he said, thou wicked servant. You allow wickedness to come in the midst. And out of your own mouth will I judge you, because you just projected on me that I was an austere man. Austere means severe. Austere means rough, severe. Of mind or manners harsh, rough or rigid. And the Lord said, and he saith unto him, out of thy own mouth will I judge thee, because you just projected on me that I'm this person. I'm going to judge you as that person that you projected upon me. Thou knewest that I was an austere man. So he's like, I'm gonna go along with what you're saying, taking up that I lay not down and reaping that which I did not sow. So I'm austere for that because I'm taking that I didn't lay down and reaping that I didn't sow. Wherefore then gavest not thou my money into the bank, that at my coming I might have required my own with usury? So you didn't even give my money. You didn't even give my money to the bank so that I could get usury for my own money. I could get some gain for my own money. You just kept it, putting yourself up as the master. And he said unto them that stood by, Take from him the pound, and give it to him that hath 10 pounds. And they said unto him, Lord, he hath 10 pounds. For I say unto you, that unto every one which hath shall be given, and from him that hath not, even that he hath shall be taken away from him. But those my enemies, which would not that I should reign over them, bring hither and slay them before me. So by not having that servant mind, He became the enemy of Alahayim. In our Yache. And many of us, we fall into that because we want to be the master. We don't just want to submit and obey. We want to be the one that has the understanding so that if it doesn't make sense to us, we're not doing it. And unfortunately, that's going to cause us to be in the same place as this wicked servant. And we're going to project, and we're going to be in our feelings, and we're going to give place to all these evil spirits just because we won't submit ourselves and have reverence unto Alahayim. So if this lesson, if it pricks you and it makes you look at yourself, go back over the lesson and see what's needful to come out of it and how to work on on changing that mindset to serve in Alahayim as a servant, not want to be a master. You don't have to understand everything to do it. You just have to do it. And do it from the heart. We thank you. And if you have any questions, please send us an email at HebrewReaders@gmail.com. Please visit the website, www.HebrewReaders.com. And definitely you can always write in the comment section. We love you all, and we pray Alahayim keeps you, and Alahayim grows you all to be a servant. And be a servant in your relationship. Don't lift yourself up against one another, and be kind one to another, and get on the same page so that you both have the understanding of what's going to help you go forth and to stay away from evil spirits and demons that tries to cause and disrupt the relationship. So with that, Alahayim keep you all, and may He prosper you. Shalom.
HRC. Hebrew readers, Church.